these 4 talks. We began with Dr. Ananta, who talked about the significance of Vedartha Sangraha. And then we have had our speakers talk about the Sri Bhashyam. Before we go into all these things, for those of us who, none of the speakers, because they did not mention the 9 gems of Sri Ramanuja, and this plenary session is addressing the works of Sri Ramanuja, I just would like to mention all the 9 works and what is significant of each work, because I thought we should have an idea as to what we could have expected, but what we couldn't cover because of the large canvas that all these works cover. Now, Swami Ramanuja is supposed to have written 9 works. And because of those 9 works, they are known as the 9 gems. They shine like 9 gems, beginning with Vedartha Sangraha, which gives the tenets of Visishtadvaita, and it's a reconciliation of the different conflicting Shrutis, how it brings out all those aspects in that short work. The Sri Bhashya, he is supposed to have written when he was almost 100 years old, and it is a detailed commentary on the Badarayana Sutras. And it also critiques, just now we listened to Professor Nataraju, it critiques the positions of Bhaskara's Veda and Yadav Prakashas and so many other schools of thought, include Shankara's. Then we have is Gita Bhashyam, and it is actually a shorter commentary of his Acharya, Alavanda Yamunacharya's Gitartha Sangraha. Then we have a very brief commentary on the Brahma Sutras, that is the Vedanta Deepa, which is meant for the, and then we have the Vedanta Sara, which is even briefer, which is meant for beginners, so that they may find the transition to studying the Vedanta Deepa or Sri Bhashya much easier, and they may get interested. And then the 6th, then he has written 3 Gadyam, that is prose works. The Sharanagati Gadyam, which gives the Prapatti doctrine, which is central to Visishtadvaita Vedanta. Sriranga Gadyam, which is actually a prayer to Lord Ranganatha at Srirangam. Sri Vaikunta Gadyam, which gives a description of Vaikunta and what is the position of the liberated souls. And the Nitya Grantha, yesterday we listened to Professor Clooney, which is a short manual for practicing all that has been said by Ramanuja in all these 8 Granthas. So in this he builds up the whole edifice of Visishtadvaita Vedanta, but this as the foundation as was given by his acharyas, predecessors Nadamuni and Yamunacharya, and then it is being carried forward by the 70 and 74 Simhasanadipatis, and that is how today we are all discussing how all these things have come to this one. And we should understand that for paucity of time, okay, all these granthas have not been discussed in their details, but it would be very nice if we had a comparative study of all these 9 granthas together, so that we cull out as to what each one has to say on a given concept of Visishtadvaita Vedanta. Now I'll come back to the talks. All of you have been very attentive and very patient in listening to these things. Now very beautifully Dr. Ananta, he brought out, he used the Stalipulaka Nyaya, he has used the Simha Avalokana Nyaya, and he talked about everything that the Vedanta Sangraha can bring out, choosing just 3 shlokas of on Yamunacharya, and how Yamunacharya is the originator of this whole system of Ramanuja's philosophy of Visishtadvaita. he talked about, the Mangala Shloka, and the second Shloka, how it refutes the other matas and establishes Ramanuja's mata, and the third Shloka, using the Shatapatra Nyaya, how it ties up all of it, and it then brings out how one needs to go to Sri Bhashyam after studying Vedanta Sangraha. Now Professor Sri Sailam, he took up the Sri Bhashyam, and we would have expected to get more about the structure of Sri Bhashyam. Unfortunately, the time was so short that he has mentioned the broad structure of Sri Bhashyam as containing the 4 adhyayas, and each adhyaya with 4 padas. And he says, why should Embarman or do a Mangala Shloka when he himself is such a great person? And he gives a reason. But he also says that the same thing, the Sri Bhashyam, is being recited as Prapanna Gayatri, and I am told that he himself does that at the Varadaraja Perumal temple almost every day. So he follows what he says. Then we listen to Dr. Sujata Raghavan on the nature of Brahman, Visheshana and Visheshya according to Sri Ramanuja. She brought out so many aspects of the relationships, and of the 9, normally 9 relationships are mentioned in Visishadvaita Vedanta between the Brahman and the Jiva, and she chose to talk about this Visheshana Visheshya Bhava, the Sambandha. In that, she brought out that the substance attribute relationship, the Prakara Prakari Bhava, and tied it up to the Satkara theory, that the self is a substance and the final cause of everything. And she has quoted from the Gita Bhashya chapter 7 in support of her bringing out this relationship. And she gave the example of a cloth with so many threads with several colors, and how the metaphysical eminence of Brahman, it stands out. And we could have, she could not elaborate more on how it is different from this thesis of world denial, or the denial of the individuality of the finite self, which her paper deals with. Naturally, obviously the denial is of Advaita Vedanta and Veda philosophies, but there was not much time for her to dwell on that. And it was a wonderful talk by Dr. Radharupalli Nataraju. His paper was to touch upon the intentionality in comparison with Husserl's intentionality, which we heard in detail yesterday by Professor Panneerselvam. But I think Professor Nataraju is aware that Professor Panneerselvam has already covered it, and so he must have, I think he has actually reduced and focused on his understanding of how Badarayana is how Ramanuja is closer to Badarayana than is Shankara. And here it was very beautiful of him to quote the relevant sutras and explain how Ramanuja's commentary is closer to Badarayana's thinking, though we still appreciate and respect the positions of all the acharyas for having given us such wonderful commentaries and to make us understand what this Brahma Sutra really wants to convey. And may we all go and enjoy this, attain more of knowledge from all these texts that all the acharyas have tried to give us, and attain that liberation which all of us are seeking. Thank you very much. Thank you, Swamiji.